Hi folks, today we're going to talk about the plunking setup for the Dick Nite Spoon. Jim Stahl of Northwest Fishing Guides is with me today, and I got to tell you, Jim, the plunking setup is easy and it's responsible for a lot of dead fish in my boat.
Yeah, mine too. And what I like about it is that you can take somebody who's not a good angler, maybe a young child or a wife or somebody, and put the rod out behind the boat, get it, having the right action, and you're going to catch fish.
That's absolutely right. One of the greatest things about plunking is it can be done from the bank as well. And in fact, plunking on the bank is probably where the plunking rig started from.
Yeah, and I was blessed in my life when I was introduced to fishing. I was introduced to fishing on the Skagit, in which what we did was plunk. And it's a lot of good times. Not only that, it catches a lot of fish. The main thing that to me is you've got to just look for that right water speed, the travel routes. But once you find them, it's dead fish.
That's right. The setup for the plunking rig is essentially the same as the setup for the drift fishing rig. And water speed is essential to this setup because with the plunking rig, we're not reeling our gear in. We're putting it in the water, we're letting it sit there and letting the fish come to the lure, aren't we?
Yeah, and you need the actual hydraulics of the water to work the spoon. And it's a fine line from, having too much water or not having too much water. But there is things that you can do, to move that lure if you have to get closer or, throw it out. But you're not fishing it effectively because you can't see the lure and, get your speed. But you are, if it's in the water and in the right spot, you're still going to catch fish.
I agree. So folks, let's look at the setup. Again, the setup for the terminal tackle is essentially going to be the same as the drift fishing rig. So in the drift fishing episode, we talked about setting up our terminal tackle on the main line. You'll notice we have a 5mm bead, a snap swivel, a 4mm bead, which protects the knot on our barrel swivel, and then of course the barrel swivel and the leader. Now folks, we have a snap swivel on right now. You don't have to use snap swivels. You can use rolling drop swivels or 3-ways, but the size is important. You want to stick with a number 10 because it balances the rig. So the terminal tackle is the same setup as the drift fishing, and your leader length is still going to be 5 to 6 feet long. Sometimes, Jim, I won't fish those 6-foot leaders when I'm plunking, mostly because I've got kids and shorter stature people in my boat,
yeah,
and they have a hard time getting that fish up close to the boat.
Where you can net it. Yeah, that's kind of, especially with these, most of the time we're running these lightweight spinning rods. With the bend of that rod and that 6-foot leader, it can be a pain to net fish. So yeah, especially with the smaller people who aren't getting as high up off the gunnel. I'll even sometimes, for like humpy fishing, I'll go as small as a 2.5-foot leader, just depending on water clarity too. But most of the time, I'm still running the longer leader.
I agree. The plunking setup is designed so that the weight sits motionless on the bottom of the river. The length of your leader on that dropper for your weight is essential because you're trying to target the depth that those fish are coming to your lure. It's the same thing for bank fishing. The only difference is if you're on a bank, you're not going to use a cannonball, you're going to use a pyramid. That pyramid won't rotate and roll in the river.
Yeah, and that with the sandy bottoms that most of our rivers have, especially in the lower, the pyramid is, that's what we've used forever. There are other styles, but most of the time, a 2 to probably a 4 ounce would be good. In higher water conditions, you might need a 6, but the pyramid sinker is definitely the way to go.
I agree. When I'm fishing, Jim, if I've got 3 or 4 rods for clients going in the water, I'll change the length of my droppers. I may put one out at 2 feet, I may put one out at 3, and I may even put one out at 4 just to see if I have a higher number of fish coming into a certain water column. So don't be afraid to try different length droppers.
No, and I think that's imperative. You always need to be playing. I mean, if you're not catching fish, you always need to be playing with your gear. And as fishermen, that's what we're good at anyways. We're always usually playing with our gear. But one place that I've really seen it, and this is getting away from, the Dick Nite, but when we're anchor fishing on the Columbia for fall fish, we'll even use as much as a 5-foot lead line.
Yes.
But if the fish are not hugging the bottom and the water temperature is a little different, those fish will come up. So do not be afraid to play with it.
Now, folks, when I plunk from a boat, I like my line angle to be 45 degrees into the water. This ensures that I'm fishing the correct depth that my dropper is. You know, the angle of separation is very important. If you cast your plunking rig too far out, then you're actually not achieving the depth that that dropper was intended for. If you have a 2-foot dropper, now you're maybe only 8 inches off the bottom.
Yep.
So it's very important that your angle of your line is set about 40-45 degrees and you're fishing that lure effectively. I'm sure the same goes for plunking from the bank. You have to make sure that your rod tip's up high enough.
Yeah, and the other with plunking off the bank is you don't have to be halfway across the river. Most of the time when you're plunking off the bank, the fish are usually going to come in fairly close to shore. You're going to be able to usually tell, kind of where the travel route is if you're on an inside corner or an outside corner. But yeah, you don't have to be casting halfway across the river.
That's right. And if you're on the bank and you're plunking, make sure you have that rod tip higher in the water. You don't want your line low to the water so that the river current grabs it. It pulls your rig out of position. So a lot of plunkers on the bank, they've got rod holders. They set a couple, 2-3 feet off the bank, and then they put their rod in that, and that keeps the correct line angle that they need. Guys, the plunking setup is really easy, and it's really easy for all ages to enjoy. There's no casting involved. You just do the setups for them, get them in the water, and these folks are fishing.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing, especially for wives and kids. And you want to get them fishing and make it as simple as you can. To me, the plunking setup is the ideal setup. You don't have to have a boat. There's not a lot of expense there. There's one nice thing about usually with our local rivers is we have lots of access to them, especially in the lower river. So get them out there, and they're really going to like this setup. It's super simple.
It is. So folks, give the plunking setup a try. I introduced this setup to several anglers this past year, and they were surprised at the success that they had and the fun that they had with their family. Again, very, very important that you achieve the proper action of your Dick Nite spoon. So if your water is a little too fast and it's rotating, then find different water. Again, try it out. Dick Nite has been helping anglers catch fish for over 60 years, and they're here to help you right now. Thanks for watching.